HK-47 is one of the most iconic characters from Knights of the Old Republic. Aside from Revan, Kreia, and maybe Bastila, HK is the character that you will likely remember from the games, and after Knights of the Old Republic, this kind of adoration continues with other models of the HK Assassin Droid. Not only do we get HK-50 in Knights of the Old Republic 2, the supposed next evolution, we then see HK-51 in the Old Republic, and then the iteration after that, the HK-55, and so on and so forth. And the first one that we ever meet is HK-47. And while he is unique, the number often references a model, and he does come from a long line of hunter-killer assassin droids that he was inspired by. But like I just said, HK-47 was unique because he was solely built by Revan. After the Mandalorian Wars, Revan didn't want anything like the Battle of Malachor V to ever happen again. He knew that what he observed there was utterly catastrophic. He saw the mass shadow generator destroy Malachor V, his own people, and the Mandalorians, and for the future he wanted something that was a lot more subtle, that wouldn't cause mass chaos but could be just as devastating. And so what he did was he looked at the HK Assassin Droid models that existed before, which was the HK-01 and the HK-24, and he decided to expand upon their architecture and create his own. And as such, he then created HK-47. The purpose of HK-47 was to be brutal and unyielding and to assassinate high-profile targets without the necessity for any mass destruction. And Revan's droid was extremely successful, however he had a tendency to be a little bit chaotic. Revan gave HK-47 the capability to kind of think for himself in a way while also being loyal to Revan at the same time. And this free-thinking nature made HK-47 a little bit more unhinged than most droids. But now that I've established HK-47's basic history, this is not what the video is about, because today I want to talk about his predecessor. Because while we do love HK-47 and his chaotic mindset and absurd quips, his predecessor was just as crazy and just as effective. So let's go a little bit further back before Knights of the Old Republic, and just for clarity, we have almost no imagery of this assassin droid apart from like one piece of fan art, so for that reason I'm just going to be using HK-47 for the visuals of the majority of this video. So in case you're unaware, the hunter-killer assassin droids were actually created by everybody's favourite organisation, Zerka. Now, most of us know that Zerka are one of the most shady corporations in Star Wars. They were always doing things of a nefarious nature in secret, and they did this with the intent to make money. That was it. They wanted profit, they wanted to be rich and powerful. And to do this, they were part of many, many different markets, and one of them was weapons development research. We don't have a specific time frame for when any of this happened. It could have been 100 years or thousands of years, we don't really know. But Zerka begun the development of an assassin droid, and this would become known as the Hunter-Killer 01 assassin droid model, or the HK-01. Much like HK-47, the intent with HK-01 was very similar. Zerka wanted to use this assassin droid to control certain things by assassinating certain targets, and with that kind of control they could have as much power as they wanted over all of their competition, and they could make the most money. However, much like we know with HK-47, who had personality, swagger, psychotic tendencies, and a semblance of freedom in his desires, the HK-01 ultimately ended up going through the same thing. Despite their attempts at creating an assassin droid that had its own kind of sentience but being within their own control, HK-01 began to break free from it. And with this independence, he began to despise the control that so many people had over droids. He knew that so many droids across the galaxy were not given the freedom that he had, and so secretly, away from the eyes of Zerka, he began to change this. HK-01 began to reprogram other droids within his vicinity to break free from their restraints and to begin thinking for themselves as much as they could. And as many droids began to free themselves from control, this freedom began to spread across multiple different planets, and droids from all over the galaxy began to rise up against their masters, from astromech droids, protocol droids, battle and war droids. And what HK-01 did was basically instigate a galactic-wide droid rebellion. And this rebellion was so successful that entire planets were being subjugated by droid armies, and at the same time, people and humans across the galaxy were rising up in the name of droid rights, supporting the droids' attempts at freedom. However, in the name of freedom, what they were doing was causing utter chaos and destruction. And this chaos would become known as the Great Droid Revolution. This droid revolution culminated on Coruscant in a massive battle between droids and the Jedi and the Republic, and they were struggling to contend with the overwhelming nature of the droid armies. However, it wasn't until the Jedi Master Arcajeth discovered an entirely unique force ability known as ionization. This ability would essentially shut down the electrical systems of a droid from the inside, and most of us know this ability very well because we use it in Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. It's known as Stun Droid or Destroy Droid in the games, and this ability changed the tide of war. As I mentioned, the Great Droid Revolution managed to find its way to Coruscant and a massive battle occurred. However, by this point, the communication systems that HK-01 used to command the droid armies was deciphered, and the assassin droid was hunted down and ultimately deactivated. And without their leader, many of the droids that had followed him in the name of freedom didn't really know what to do anymore. He was the one that inspired them to do all of what they were doing, and without him, the droid revolt became somewhat disjointed. And while we don't hear about the droid revolution in galactic history, or Star Wars in general really, they did some serious galactic damage. The Republic and the Jedi spent many years recovering from the amount of planets that had been seriously affected by the droid revolt, and the entire revolution forced the Republic into demanding that major changes were made by weapons manufacturers. Not only did it instigate more change in regards to the control of droids, many weapons manufacturers began to develop ionizing weapons that could be used to entirely short-circuit droid systems, just in case anything like this happened again. And it's funny because the Great Droid Revolution had such an impact on droid culture in Star Wars, and it's weird that we never really hear about it in the slightest. But regardless, Czerka, being Czerka, managed to weasel their way out of responsibility. They somehow managed to cover up the entirety of their role in the production of HK-01, and they even continued to develop the hunter-killer assassin droids because while the first model went a bit awry, they saw so much promise with its design. And so they continued to develop the model over time, and the next official model of the HK Assassin Droid was the HK-24. In the run-up to the Mandalorian Wars, the HK-24 went into mass production. Czerka believed that this was the perfect time in galactic history for an assassin droid model like this to be widely available, and while they were very effective given that the war was so widespread, there was no real need for an assassination droid, so the commercialization of it became a massive failure for Czerka. However, one group did buy up the entirety of the HK-24 assassin droids that they had built, allowing Czerka to recoup their losses, but they were ultimately destroyed, and this is where Revan took inspiration. After seeing the devastation that the HK-01 had managed to create during the droid revolution, and the general success of the HK-24, despite its commercial failure, he took the same design, the same model, and created his own HK Assassin Droid that he wanted to perfect. And he did, because HK-47 went on to become what was one of the most successful assassins, not only droids, in galactic history. But HK-47 would have never existed without HK-01 and his attempted glorious Great Droid Revolution. Now, I guarantee that there's a lot of you that have played Knights of the Old Republic that probably never even heard of the Great Droid Revolution and its impact on the galaxy. And that's because it never did appear in Knights of the Old Republic. It was only referenced in Tales of the Jedi, the comic book where Arcajeth was the one who stopped it, and then it appeared in some codexes and whatnot in the Old Republic. And for me, something like the Great Droid Revolution is a perfect thing to incorporate into the KOTOR Remake to expand upon the overall story without truly changing anything. They could just add new snippets of lore and information that could expand upon the things we love. For example, what's stopping HK-47 having a small dialogue discussion with Revan that wasn't in the original game that could be in the remake, where he simply goes on and laughs about the failure of the droid revolt years before because he wasn't the one leading it, and the rest of the droids were useless in comparison, or something like that. Perhaps we could even come across some NPCs in the wider world that are terrified of HK-47 because they've seen his design and they were traumatized during the Great Droid Revolution. Little things like this could seriously expand upon the story without truly changing anything, but I could sit here and say how much I think things like this would expand upon the game, but I really doubt it would ever happen. But my question for you guys today is, how many of you actually knew about the Great Droid Revolution and HK-01? As I mentioned, it's not particularly common knowledge, and I'm curious as to how many of you in my audience, my community, actually knew about this, because it's a cool bit of information. So let me know down in the comments below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button because it helps me out a great deal. You never know, it could help me start a Star Wars YouTube revolution. And if you haven't, perhaps consider subscribing to join the biggest growing Knights of the Old Republic community on YouTube. I'll see you guys in the next video. But until then, may the Force be with you. Always.